So just a reminder, in case there is people who is here for the first time or something like that, we are a group that makes self-organized meetings every Sunday to study AI-related topics. We have what we do is we organize sessions in a way that every week someone volunteers to lead the session. So we normally have a pace of one chapter per week. So the person who's going to lead will basically make a presentation of the chapter that we're going to do that week. Everything is discussed in Discord. So wherever we decide what's going to be the next book, we decided there. We have already done 2 books. We finished already building an LLM from scratch from Sebastian Raschka and AI engineering from Chip Wen. And we are now reading LLM Engineer's Handbook. This is the 2nd week. And today's chapter is going to be, today's chapter is going to be led by Chris. It's about tooling and installation. And the only last thing that I want to say is that we have an ongoing discussion about starting beginner lessons, and we made a poll. So at the end of the sessions, we would have to do 2 things. One is to discuss about the beginner lessons and choose a book and decide if we want to make a poll or something to actually decide when we're going to do the beginner lessons. And we also are going to be asking for the volunteer for the 3rd chapter. So go thinking if anyone wants to actually take the lead. And having said that, I'm going to leave Chris to lead us today.
Okay. I shall share my screen, starting that process now. 2, 1. All right. I should be broadcasting. And can everyone see my screen fine?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. All right. So I'm doing chapter 2. It's the tooling and installation chapter. And I'm going to start by just a quick introduction to chapter 2. We're going to get into the Python ecosystem and the installation portion of that. Then the bulk of the chapter is really about machine learning ops and the tooling and what tools were used and why they chose them. And so this is the introduction. The author really, kind of started out by saying that it's a quick walkthrough. We're not going to really dive into the details of setting things up and whatnot. That will all start to become apparent as we progress through the book. And really just wanted to focus on here are the prerequisites to for the book. These are the tools that are required, and here's some basic setup instructions. For example, there is a part about AWS, setting up AWS, which I'm not going to go through on that detail, but we're going to go through mostly what tools and why they use those tools. So let's start just with my development environment, so you can understand. I've decided to implement this book on this little Jetson Aura Nano that you see on the right of my screen. And so that actually setting that up took a lot, because it's a headless system. Setting that up took a lot of work. So how I install what I'm going to show you next, how I set up, may be different than what you're going to experience, but it's it's a Linux system, so it'll be more or less the same. I just work in a highly containerized environment in here in order to make my AI development environment work on this ARM64 chip and GPU. So I generally work in with Tmux and NeoVim and then the container. So here, on the left of my screen is when I'm if I were in a shell of a container. On the right is a shell into my actual host machine, that Jetson. I'm not going to get into that. But towards the book, he gets into the Python ecosystem, and that they'll be using 3.11.8, Python version 3.11.8. And initially, I wanted to install Conda, or that's just generally how I work, and V environment. But don't do that. I did it without even, I just did it and then realized that was a big mistake. And we'll get into what the actual way that the book goes about implementing. And also, it's important to have Git installed and to clone the repo for the book. That will be necessary for you to set up. So I have instructions on how I did everything. I'm not going to get too lost into exactly what I did, but all of those instructions, I'd like to just post them on our Discord server. And I think I'm just going to wait until we have a section, a category for the book, like we've done with the last two books, so I can put it in the right chapter. But I will post these slides and also the all these instructions that you will see in these slides. All right, so I mentioned that I like to use Conda and not to do it here. What you have to do here is the Pi environment, and it's really two parts. It's Pi environment, but it's also poetry. And Pi environment, what that does for you is it really focuses in on what Python implementation you should that your system will focus on, and that's all it does. Where Conda does that, but also manages all of the different packages that are installed in that particular environment. Pyen that does not do that. It only does, it points you to the right distribution of Python that you're working with. The setup was pretty straightforward, maybe a little bit more complicated for me because of my environment, but again, I will share my instructions. And just so you know, whenever I'm working, I am always working with an LLM these days. So I do that for two reasons. One, because I actually can't use my hands with a mouse or a keyboard. I have very severe repetitive stress injuries, so I can just copy code like you see here. I can just copy boxes. So I'm just sharing this so you can, when you're starting to implement it, I highly recommend using a large language model if you're not already, because they're really good, very helpful. So now, in order to manage all the different things that you'll need for this, you use something called poetry. And so I'm going to get into that, and also poets. Now, poetry, this will manage all of the different packages and the versions of packages very specific to your development environment for the book. And Poet, it's kind of like aliases. It allows you, for that poetry environment, to run all kinds of commands like you would if you were using alias. So I can type run -server, and it will do a bunch of more complicated things, rather than having to do all those complicated things on the command line one by one. I thought it was pretty cool. I actually never heard of. I've never used poetry or Poet. I usually have other ways of doing stuff, but so it was kind of interesting to me. Okay, so that was the basic, get your hands dirty and set up your machine part. It was very brief. Those were the major components of it. And now the book starts to get into machine learning ops. And so the first thing that they start to talk about for machine ML ops were Hugging Face as their model registry. And in case you didn't know what a model registry was, I like to think about it as like GitHub for machine learning models. It basically gives you a centralized, and what they oftentimes spoke about, a single source of truth for models. It was a place where people can collaborate together on models, and all of the versioning, the actual storage, the versioning, the metadata of that model, and all of that is located in this one central repository. And so they use Hugging Face for that purpose and they chose Hugging Face because of the community nature of Hugging Face. And I think the open source nature of it applied to that particular choice as well. Although I might be misspeaking on that. It might have been why they chose one of the other tools. But that still stands true. So as I'm going along in this presentation of what really is the tooling, I'm always going to show just a screenshot from the website of that tool, because a lot of times you'll find in their initial page, it tells you a lot about the tool itself. So then they talked about ZenML, and ZenML served the function of orchestration, artifacts, and metadata, which I'm going to go to what each one of those mean. But ZenML has this concept. So what is it? What is it doing? It's basically managing your pipeline. And they have this idea, it's called the stack concept. And apparently they're the first ones to originate this concept, where you stack all the different services that are part of your workflow, part of your pipeline for your ML op. And what's interesting about this stack concept, that it allows you to layer different services and the ability to interchange from those services. So for example, if you have a different cloud provider, let's say you're using for your GPUs, you're using Azure, you can switch that out for using something from AWS. And really what it's doing is what this tool is doing is it's bringing all of your infrastructure and your tools in one place where you can manage it from one place. So this is the ZenML website, and the hero of the website says ML ops for reliable AI, and it shows a little picture of all these things, this workflow, and I think that kind of sums up what it is. This is allowing you to manage your entire pipeline from one place, put all the pieces together. But really, those three things that I said I would cover, orchestration, artifacts, and metadata, those are the key things of ZenML. So let's go into all three of them. So if you imagine when you're building your pipelines, you have to make sure that all of the tools are executed correctly in the right order. And when you talk about an orchestrator, it's a platform that does this orchestration of scheduling things, and it automates this process of going through your pipeline to whatever the final result of that is. So that's what an orchestrator does. Artifacts are files, and he talks in the book. They talk about the models themselves, the data sets, logs, checkpoints. These are all artifacts, and metadata is a way it's information about these artifacts that you can look at them to understand what is the artifact without actually having to open it up. It's information about maybe what was done with that model or what's contained in it. So these are the three main things that that this tool helps you manage. Okay, so we have this pipeline, and then he gets into, what does training a machine learning model involve? And he mentions a couple things, running experiments. So when you're training, you want to run experiments to see what works best to train to optimally train your model. And it involves comparing these experiments, having some metrics that you can use to compare them, and ultimately deciding on which model is the best model that's been trained the best, what methodologies were used to train it that you can then ultimately use in your production. And so Comet ML is a tool that that the book recommends for the evaluation of your models. And on their main website, their tagline is achieve consistency and predictability in your AI applications and agentic systems at scale with Comet's end-to-end model evaluation platform. So that is the purpose of Comet ML. And then another key part of your entire stack is monitoring your prompts. And if you imagine prompt monitoring them, it's not going to work like if you were monitoring events through log files of your system. If you have one prompt, it might have depended on something else. So you need to really monitor the traces of those prompts. And the tool that they chose for this was called OPIC. OPIC is also an open source tool that is from the Comet ML folks as well. And it actually provides a lot of the similar, if not exact services of evaluation that Comet does. And I think Comet ML is the paid portion, and OPIC is the open source portion. But if you look at this picture, you can see that what it's really giving you is a dashboard to see, what are your prompts? What is happening with your prompts? What was the input prompt and what was the output? And it allows you to monitor those traces and then debug them. So that was a tool recommended by the book authors. And then they get into the databases that they use. And it was really a two-part database recommendation. There is first the NoSQL database for the unstructured text, all the things that we'll be gathering that will about ourselves, that raw data. And they've chosen to use MongoDB. It's been around a long time, so I'm not going to get too into that. I'm sure we all know what that is. But the second part of that database pipeline was taking all of that unstructured data and putting it into a vector database. And so their goal was to choose something. There was a lot of choices, but they wanted to choose something that what they called light, but also that would be used by the industry for many years to come. So their expectation is that, learn this and it will serve you for many years. And the database that they chose is, I don't know how to pronounce that, Qdrant, or So, and being the second part of it, like I already mentioned, it takes the data that you have in MongoDB and stores it, and that's what you would be using for your model. And their homepage, high performance vector search at scale, powering the next generation of AI applications with advanced open source vector similarity search technology. That's them in a nutshell. So next, the book talked about training and inference compute. And I've just glossed over this section because they spend several pages talking about setting up AWS, and I think that's something that each one of us can just do on our own. We don't really need to spend that much time talking about. The important thing I think was what they chose as the GPUs that we would be using for this project and why they chose it. So they wanted something, a platform that would allow them to, not have something working out of the box, but something that could be customized, but wasn't completely customizable. And in fact, they talked about it not being a completely customizable solution. That if you wanted that, you would start an ECS system and build it all from scratch. And what they chose is something that would be a balance between something that was completely customizable to something being completely managed was SageMaker. And they thought that this really gave us just the right flexibility. So this is what we'll be using in the project, but it's not the only thing. You don't have to use it, but that is what they're going to be using. That was the 30,000-foot view of what was covered in this chapter. Now, there's some things that I also glossed over besides the Amazon implementation on the ML ops portion. And I wanted to keep that more open in our discussion about this chapter. What was what was everyone's experience, or do we even want to dive into that further? And so this is the end of my presentation about chapter 2.
Thanks, Chris. Amazing presentation. Quite a difficult topic. I was thinking while I was reading the chapter, I was thinking that it was going to be like a very challenging chapter to be covered because it's tooling, like it's things that you have to go on and prepare in your computer, but you did a great job. Thank you.
I was like, man, I could bore the heck out of them with here's what I did, and then I did this, and here's what I did next. But I was like, everyone's environment's going to be different.
Yeah, so you mentioned that Conda, you had installed Conda. Now, as I understand it, you can install Conda and also use other tools like Poetry as well at the same time. Isn't that true?
You can, you absolutely can, but and I did. I actually installed
Because that's what I did. I at some point a couple months ago I installed Conda, and then I started looking up how to make other ones work while you had Conda in place. And it works out pretty well.
Yeah, I first implemented V environment, which is native, and so if you can imagine my system, this little device, right? I've got my host system that does use Conda. But then when I want to do any real work, it's best if I use an already vetted container, because it's hard to set up all the tools for.
Oh, you mean like containers? That.
Yeah.
Docker
containers, yes, because it's ARM64, and it's a Jetson, it's it's an edge device. So anytime I'm working on any project, what I've done, so I just spin up these servers and I work on those servers. So then I have to work in that environment, and then that becomes difficult because how do they set up that environment? So I wanted just to use environment because it's native to Python. And so, yeah, I did that, no problem. But then I was like, well, as I move along this book, I'm working outside of the framework of the book. That can cause some problems that I'm not even aware of yet. And so I just decided to remove that that .vn that I installed. And it actually wasn't that hard just doing it their way, because it's kind of interesting. I've never used this PyEnv, but it's kind of like it's attached to the folder that you're working in.
Yeah, I haven't used Python. I looked it up just now, and I understand the basic idea. It's basically that focuses more on picking the primary Python you want to use.
Yeah, but also it being tied to the actual. So like if I were working in Conda, I would activate it, right? I would, and the same thing with vEnvironment, I would activate it. But with PyEnv, you just you associate it with the folder that you're in. So once you've set that variable for that particular folder, then anytime I'm in that folder, that environment is up and running. And so that's all it does. And what it doesn't do that the other two do is those will manage all of your packages in your environment. So you've got an isolated space. For that, then you use Poetry. And then there was the book was talking about why Poetry was a better choice than Conda and vEnvironment. I don't know what you call it.
I never really cared for Conda. I never got into it too much, but other ones, I forget the one I usually use, but it's the one that's always cited. I forget the name of it.
It's maybe UV.
Is that the one built by Rust in Rust?
Yeah, the UV one that's built in Rust, so that's kind of hot nowadays, and it has like multiple folks and multiple repositories, like open source repositories. People are switching to it from Conda, and like in the Sebastian's book that we did last time, that repository has also switched to UV, and like many others like are currently going through that route because it's quite fast and it has a lot of like advantages of both Poetry and pip combined. So
yeah, VN.
yeah.
VEN. Yeah, the virtual environment. Yeah, that's one. That's the one.
I'm gonna check it out. Yeah.
I use that one. It's first it's a little bit harder, but then you get used to it, and it's actually very good. It's like Git, it's very tedious, but you get used to it.
Yeah. So when I work, I have to use my voice for
Oh yeah.
So when I set up like my aliases for like working with Conda, they're in place. It's just a pain to set them up. So that's why it's hard for me to switch to something else because I have to set them all up again. But I might give it a try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Chris. Thank you so much for your presentation. So
Oh,
I think when you started, and I am also a Conda user, so I'm used to, run all of my projects on Conda. However, since I'm getting into this, kind of practice, and I was cautious and I didn't install anything before this session. So I am a Mac user computer. So, so I am a Mac user. I don't use Linux. And when I was looking the differences between PyEnv versus Conda, there might be no interfering in the system. However, I'm curious if it might be some challenges. I don't know if you can help me since I am a Mac computer user, But I was wondering if there is some incompatibilities between Conda and the PYAMB in order to install, because I don't want to mess up my laptop with all of, new stuff. That's one.
Mm. So, I did install both the VM, the native manager of environment manager of Python, and PyEnv, and you can have both, but it's not good practice to do that, because you can accidentally think you're doing something and you did it in the wrong, so it's better to focus on one. But just because you have Conda on your system, it doesn't mean you have to use it, right? You could not have it running and just run off your terminal and use something else, right? So when I want, if I want to use Conda, I have to activate it.
Okay. Yes.
So I can just deactivate it, and then I'm on my base Python package of my system, right? And then I could then use another environment manager. So I think that you would, I'm not a Mac user, but I do this on Linux and on Windows, and it's no big deal.
I will give it a try to, and yeah, I'll let you know how it goes. But yes, but I just want to make sure about which kind of, both can work or not. And also I make a question to these chatbots, and they suggest to use brew install Python. I don't know if you are familiar with that.
Yeah.
And this is, I don't know, is recommended to use or
so the one thing I will share with Brew is more system oriented. So when you install anything from Brew, it's going to go directly into the Mac, like on there, which is a good thing, because Brew installs are probably better than anything else. But as you're already exploring, you do want to use some kind of package manager like Python, like UV or Poetry or Conda or VM. Do use one, because so first thing, let me just say, Carolina, you're absolutely right. You don't want to corrupt your Mac.
I talk about based on my experience. I mess up my computer.
As do I. I start off saying, okay, I'm going to do a reinstall every year, and I won't mess it up. 3-4 months into it, I will mess it up. It just, and it's happened like literally every year for the last 15-20 years or more. So just, you're going to just keep backups. But that being said, any of the package managers, just pick one and try to be consistent with it, and keep it updated is probably the only way. And just keep backups. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And by the way, Mac users are Unix users. If you're doing anything in terminal, it's this, you're still a Linux user. So
yeah. And also the confusion was, when I was looking at the documentation of Zen ML, they use the pip install, and that's what I'm making this question because, again, maybe other people might ask this, but it's important to clarify. If you go to the documentation of Zen ML, they suggest to include the pip install. So I use pip install in my Conda, but I might be able to also do my pip install for the implementation of the guidelines for this book as well. So I want to make sure about differences this is a naive question, but I want to make sure that everyone has the better understanding about these kind of differences. I don't know if my question made sense.
I don't know. I guess that Mac should work probably in the same way as Linux. I use Ubuntu. In Ubuntu, in the latest years, if you try to pip install, just open a terminal and write pip install something, usually you're going to get an error message that tells you you are installing something in a system-wide, and this is considered like a bad practice. So don't do that. But the solution that I found that is the easiest, at least for me, is to use VM because it's the standard Pythonish way of handling dependencies independently for each project, which is folder based, as Chris mentioned before. So the idea is, if I want to create a new project, I create the folder, I do Python VM, I create the new VM folder, I activate it with source VM being activate or something like that, and then I run pip install. Once you did that in the terminal, you're not installing system-wide, but inside the folder. So it's going to create a .pm folder with all the dependencies for that specific project, even the different Python binary. So for this project, I have a folder where I have the Python 3.11, which only is for this book. But then in my system, I use a different version of Python. So.
Gotcha. So basically, I'm going to create like a folder on my local machine on my documents to install all of dependencies for this project instead of trying to do, making in my whole system. Okay, makes sense.
So, so one of the reasons why, so you're going to use Poetry, right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
I mean, I want to, use all of the implementation for the book. So yeah.
Yeah, because there's this whole, which I didn't, something that Poetry brings to the table is it allows you to pull the book's all of its dependencies into your project. That was, had I not done that, it would have been so difficult to set everything up. I wasn't, like, it reminded me of like when I used to work with Ruby on Rails a long time ago. Having a file that allowed me to replicate a project, all of the plugins of that project exactly. That's what Poetry brought to the table. I've never done that before. That was new to me. So it was important to use Poetry for that reason.
Did the book mention how you do that?
Yeah,
Cool.
it does.
Okay.
That,
well, I looked at Poetry a couple times. It seems pretty cool.
Yeah, I still don't exactly know what it did. I know that that there were all of the, the reason why you had to download their repo was so you could, get access to this TOML file that had all of the, all of the things that you would need and which things you would need that all work together. And so that's what Poetry did, is it kind of sucked it up, and I presume it, instantiated it on your, your folder, your project. I don't know. Can anyone talk about that a little bit more about, what is it doing with that TOML file, Poetry? Did anyone?
Yeah, sure. So the 2ML file is sort of like you're declaring the the things about the project, like what the Python version this project is going to use, what are the dependencies and their versions. Like either you say it's like NumPy 1.25 dot something, or anything greater than 1.25. You are basically specifying what all things are required for your project. And then when you do an initial setup using Poetry, what it does is it creates a new virtual environment for that project, and then install all your dependencies based on whatever is specified in that .2ml file. And also any sub dependencies, it sort of like, again, I think it creates a .log file, which has like, let's say NumPy has a requirement on maybe, I don't know, maybe some ABC package, right? So it also pins the version of ABC package, so that if some other library is also using ABC package, you install the one which is compatible with both of them, right? So it sort of does your build management, the dependency management for your project. Like it's sort of similar to like how you have Maven or Gradle on the Java side. I'm not sure if Java folks are here. And for PyEnv, I would like to add a couple of points. PyEnv is more of like maintaining the Python version. Like it's mostly, useful if you have to, work on projects that use different Python and versions. Uh, so that's what PyEnv is useful for. Like you install PyEnv, and whenever you install a Python using PyEnv, it installs that Python in a so basically when you install PyEnv, it sort of creates a .pyn directory in your root home folder. I mean, I guess it may depend upon the on the OS you're using, but it sort of creates a .pyn directory. And whatever Python, like let's say you say pyn install Python 3.11.8 in this case, right? So it would in it like create a version directory, and in that it would install like it would create a subdirectory called 3.11.8 and install a Python there. It's just more like managing different versions of Python for different projects. So that, let's say you have some other project that requires Python 3.10. So you can just, easily switch between the two projects. It sort of makes the managing of Python version easy. Yeah, it just does that.
So you are talking about the TOML file, .toml file, right?
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
talking about.
Cool. Yeah, cool. So
Yeah.
like there is some blogs that I would like to mention. Like poetry is good, but if you're trying to like have multiple uh, dependencies installed from a Python point of view, then like UV is the best since it uses your network bandwidth to a full extent with installing and like trying to uh, 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 like since it has Rust, so you know how fast it is, and the standards plus you can use pip too, so you can install a package like doing the pip away, like using UV pip and the package name to get it installed in your machine too. So that also creates a folder like a VN that classics like classical we used to do that way. So yeah, that kind of helps. But like yeah, so like each and everyone is on a different route right now. So I'm not forcing anyone, but yeah, you can like take this, and there are some videos too that you can get help with. Specifically with, I would like to suggest the Sebastian's video. Like he has a very good intro to using UV since when I started using it for the first time, and then you can slowly gear up to using it in a more pro way.
Oh, cool. Could you post that on if you have it bookmarked or anything?
Yeah. I will find that and post it here.
Yeah, just as a final mention, one of the differences, I mean, both UV and Poetry use this how is it called, PyProject TOML or something like that. And one of the things that I found that it's kind of nice is that if you add a dependency with Poetry add, it will save that dependency into your TOML file, which contains the list of your dependencies. But the old way before we had Poetry, it was that you created your Py environment, your virtual environment. You install dependencies there with pip install, and then you executed pip freeze and saved a requirements.txt file. But the issue is that it contained not only the dependencies that you explicitly required, but also the dependencies of the dependencies, the indirect dependencies. So you got a very big file. And with Poetry, it's a little bit cleaner because you have only the direct dependencies that you have. And then it is the other file, the log file, is the one that contains the explicit details of everything that was installed. So the indirect dependencies, to say it that way. So it's a little bit easier to read. If you go to the file, you just see what your project needs. You don't have like a full detail of packages.
Can I share something really quick? And it's just for people to get started. We have a lot of tools available. I've got to give Apple permissions to Zoom. One sec, please. Oh, I'm going to have to quit and come back. What I want to share is you can connect this code repo, just as Carlos explained. He creates everything in a separate folder, right? And keep that environment specific. You can then use one of the latest IDEs. There's plenty out there from Cursor. I'm sure everyone's heard about the interesting things going on with Windsurf. And my preference is one called Kiro today. It's the latest one from Amazon, also released really about the less than the last 10 days. This one, and so what I'm doing here, what I want to show, and I have to get out of Zoom to come back in, is I just connected it to the same repo and I said, hey, the books repo uses poetry. Let's change everything to UV. And it starts immediately by changing the pyproject.toml file and rewriting a lot of these things. And so another great resource and way of being able to work with these tools, because ultimately you're still going to have to open the project in some kind of Python editor anyway. So if you can bear with me for a couple of minutes, I'll come back and I'll share.
Okay.
So
Yes, please.
I'll let everybody just sort of go on. Keep
I
going.
got you. I got you. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to have something like, I use NeoVim in when I'm working in Linux, but I would love to have, an LLM in an IDE. That would be amazing because it can do all the typing for me. That's what I need it for. I wonder if what Mash is describing, so like in my setup, I've got my device it's over there, but I have this iPad in front of me that I'm talking into. That's how I control it. So I SSH into it, and then I use NeoVim to do any code, writing any code or anything like that. I wonder, so the files are in this container, and then this container, it basically uses the host. The files are available in the host. I wonder how these IDEs that that are kind of browser based would connect with it. I'm curious. Anyone know? I mean, can you do that? I mean, I'm used to like you would need to actually have the IDE installed in your environment in order to get access to the files, in order to use Copilot or something like that. I wonder, can that be done? Anyone know? Oh, okay, here's Mash. I'll ask him.
Go ahead and what was the question?
I was just saying that, so I'm tunneling into my device, which is in another room, right? And I use NeoVim to work on, to do any writing any code. I was wondering if with this Kiro, how would he get access to my files if they're on this little edge device that's in another room that I'm tunneling into through an iPad?
You're going to have to tunnel in through an iPad.
Yeah, that's how. So it's a headless system, right?
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, is Kiro something you have to install on your device in order to work? Oh, okay.
It is a device install. I think Windows, and I don't know if they have it on Linux. You're using a Linux machine, so you're going to be limited on IDEs. But if you're able to access it locally off of your machine, then it is, it's just that. So if I go,
but it's headless. So what you're talking about requires a GUI.
Correct. So if I were to, I don't know if you can see this, if I were to open a new project, I could, right now I'm just opening the LLM Engineers Handbook project. So you're installing the IDE locally. You connect to it any way you would normally do it. There are IDEs that are browser based entirely. I'm blanking out on the names of those. And that probably would work as the browser base would create its own instance, and you could download the repo and load everything in memory, but then it's not persistent. When you turn off that instance, your work is blown away. Now, if you're saving this locally and you're tunneling in via NeoVim, I don't have that kind of setup, so I don't know, but if you've got a desktop installation, then you can pretty much, you should be able to access that same folder structure and get going. So anyway, start with a quick prompt, look at the repository and help me understand what it is, explore it for me. So it does that exploratory and tells you, well, really, and you can see how it methodically starts with a README file, looks at the workspace, begins to look at the various different configurations and settings and code examples of code snippets, even the Docker setup. And then, of course, using the README, basically creates its own README to say, here's what's really happening in this entire repo. Then I can say, all right, and here are the key commands, blah, blah, blah. It goes into a lot more detail on its own. Then I say, let's use UV instead of poetry. And it starts to read through the files and makes the individual changes. Starts making changes in the READMEs and blah, 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 and so on. And here's how you begin to set it up. Now, if I can continue coding, where I use this as my assistant while I learn this instructional repo, I could continue doing that, as well as reading through, while also reading through the book. Just as we're doing this pair programming approach, this becomes your assistant to do just that. I don't know if I've explained myself appropriately, but happy to try to take questions here. And as it makes these changes, you can see it'll just opens up the same README file and the Docker file, where you can see if it replaced poetry with UV, which, as you can see here, it did. Now, it can make mistakes. These things we're just still starting off, but that's the fun part of figuring out what it's doing and learning from both you and your assistant's mistakes, if you will.
But Mash, this is like an extension of your visual code, or how do you install this new agent?
So Kiro, this IDE connects into their own service. So you're getting access to Claude Sonnet 4.0
Yep.
or 3.7.
Mm-hmm.
Cursor gives you access to entirely different models. Windsurf, I believe, gave access to Claude Sonnet 4.1, and then they took it away and they brought it back again. And so you get access to it for free. If you want, there are limits. So in fact, even with Kiro, I've hit those limits, the free tier limits. If you want more access, then you can subscribe to it for like usually $15 to $20 a month. And then you get more tokens, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to use up those tokens depending on which model you choose. The more performant, larger models will consume your tokens a lot faster. And the tokens are not are LLM tokens.
Mm-hmm.
not the usage necessarily directly, but
I use Copilot, but I don't think Copilot is good.
Copilot is actually quite performant. Copilot is good. Are you using Copilot with Visual Studio?
Yeah,
Visual Studio Code. Yeah, and that's a good pair. Copilot, Visual Studio Code really was the first IDE like this that once they opened, it was open source, and Windsurf, Cursor, they were just forking their own versions of their products. Microsoft, GitHub have made sure that GitHub Copilot, which was the first code assist that came out a year and a half before ChatGPT. So it's been around. So the team that works on it, they do know what they're doing. Integrates into Visual Studio Code very, very well. If you're a traditional Visual Studio Code user, that's your preferred IDE, and you've got it connected to GitHub Copilot, it's fine. You're not missing too much. The things that you might miss would be some interesting features that each of these new IDE providers like Cursor, Windsurf, Kiro, and there are others, they always add a little nuanced feature to try to differentiate themselves. But if you're Visual Studio Code with Copilot user, you're fine. And if you want,
I'm going to offer a contrary opinion on that. I think the foundation model you use is absolutely critical. And in my opinion, in my experience, and I use this heavily, if it isn't Claude or Gemini, it's subpar. And here's why. If I'm using if I need some reasoning about a problem that I'm trying to solve and it's complicated, I might use Claude 4.0 experimental. Or if I'm writing code and I need code to be decent code, I would use Claude 3.5. But if I needed to a long discussion about some aspect of a code base, I would use Gemini 2.5 because your context window is much larger than what you would get through an Anthropic model, and it's compare. And I use them all, and I can and sometimes I'll ask one, and then I'll ask another one its opinion about the one that the solution that's been offered by another one, and those two, Anthropic or Gemini, I wouldn't use anything else. No, I've used all the other ones. They're not good. They're very, very, they make lots of mistakes, and they're just not that good.
I think, yes, I agree with Chris in terms of, I am a big user to use Claude 4.0. And I didn't know that, I knew that the Gemini model, have a bigger context window than other models. And I might add, when I using the context in my folder, switch to that model.
Yeah.
I try to use Gemini as it's integrated in one of my tools for my school. And when I try to prompt in terms of, debugging, coding, and that stuff, I don't think sometimes it's good. In my opinion, Claude so far is pretty good when you are, at least for me, that's,
it's pretty much the one that most people, talk about. I'll tell you something else is a good practice to do when you're using this. I always if I have a strain of a problem, I will copy my question into a markdown editor, paste it into a markdown editor, and I will copy that response and paste it into a markdown editor, and I will keep a kind of a storyboard.
Like a record, yes.
Yeah, and then I'll bring that over to another model and say, here's what we're doing, what do you think? And it just makes it so much, it's like I got a team of workers, who are all thinking about a problem.
That's good.
And then I can, even when I'm setting up my environments, like I will, copy the history of all the commands that I've executed to set up that environment. and then have it write a report on what I did, and then just save it.
That's good. And which editor do you use for Markdown?
I use something called Bear. So I work exclusively through an iPad Pro. So Bear is something that you use there, and it's a you have to pay for it. It's only like $28 a year, I think. I use it every single day. Everything. I just markdown, save it, and I store it. And so what I love about that is I may come back to a problem later because there's now an issue. I'll even track the issues in that interaction with an LLM, and I can update whatever model on here's what we've done, here's the issue, because it might be months and months later, or maybe there's an issue with my system. I'll say, well, here's how the system was built. What do you think?
Why do you use Markdown? Just because you can highlight little things and things like that?
I use Markdown because it models generally, that's the way that they structure responses in Markdown. And how they accept Markdown. They're trained well on Markdown. So that's why I use it. And it's just easy to use. It's really easy.
I was using, or yes, I am use Obsidian. And
yeah, I'm familiar.
Sometimes it's good, because sometimes make like the networks, how your nodes can be connected, and then use the
your Zettelkasten.
Yeah.
Has anyone used, and I agree with Chris, by the way, on the choice of foundation models. Gemini is really good. And to add to that, there's always going to be a new foundation model. A new one is the one from the Chinese team, Kina something.
Yeah, they're new.
Kimi, thank you.
Yeah.
Kimi, which for code assist is supposed to be pretty capable, but it's a fairly large model. But and I agree that Gemini is a common one for code assist. Gemini does seem to work really well. Has anyone used Google's AI Studio, which is entirely web, like on your Google platform? So it's cloud web enabled, and that would access to Gemini.
I kind of used it for like prototyping a Android application in one of the local meetups that I had. But it's good for that kind of setup in which you want to do everything on the web and quickly prototype and show it to a client and such. But if you want to go into deeper and have multiple dependencies of different files and assets like we have in mobile platforms when we are developing there. So, and try to manage those pictures, those 3D graphics and such, those audio files when you're building a full-fledged app. For that, Android Studio or your Xcode is the best choice. But yeah, for prototyping quickly and showing it to a client or getting feedback, then it is a good uh, first step, kind of basically. Or you can quickly based on the prompt, uh, you can do it via Bolt too, which is specifically tailored to that use case, like developing apps and trying on different screens and different views of what you're trying to build, and you have a complete different workflow when you're trying suppose a Duolingo type application versus suppose a shopping type application, or uh, a learning based application that is other than that of Duolingo. So you can tell an application a vibe coded based on your workflow choice, and you can then play around in the first case with the colors and the themes and the images, and in the second case with the second workflow and in the third case with the third workflow, and you can show that to a client and like get information out of that quickly. So for that kind of stuff, like it is very good.
Yeah, agreed.
Does anyone use Zed?
Yes.
What were your thoughts?
I like it. It's a much thinner tool running on your local machine. I connected Zed to my Claude Professional paid subscription. Started to use up my credits pretty rapidly and fast because of what I was doing. But I like Zed. Tools like Zed and Warp, which is basically takes your Mac terminal and upgrades it with AI. I have a preference for it just because I want to stay on top of it. I think those are more early prototypes of future platforms. Everything that we've been talking about are the tried and true tools today, but there's going to be another generation, a new generation of tools that there's always a next generation. Zed and Warp feel like examples of next generation.
More like a coder's tool.
More like, yes, coder, because even today, the work is becoming much more AI infused. And those coders who use AI tools and be able to access, as Chris mentioned, the latest and greatest foundation models are more important, are able to use that seamlessly into their work with the tools that don't create a lot of baggage.
Yeah.
Bare metal, that's the way you want to work. It's, if you go back to like 20, 30 years ago, it's basically knowing keyboard shortcuts that you never take your fingers off the keyboard. It's being able to work like that.
Yeah, I did that Bolt hackathon recently, and so I used their product. I hated it. It just, it just did like huge global changes, and I was like, no control. Just,
Look, Bolt, I think, works, and a lot of these tools are very salesy. Salespeople, especially those in working, like myself, working management consulting for the big name consulting firms, are trying to sell those multi-million, tens of millions of dollar deals to large corporations, where at the end of the day, once you sell it, the work is going to be done by very cheap labor offshore for, people making $30, $35 an hour. And that's it. That's for making that large corporate sale, Bolt to vibe code something, those things work. But it's not what a true engineer would ever really use, Chris.
Yeah.
I think we're saying the same thing. Yeah, there are lots of tools out there, and it's forums like this where we're all able to share and sort of swap notes and allow each, leverage each other's experience to know what are the tools that we need to work with. As Carlos sort of repeats a line that I once said, no one is as smart as all of us. And this is an example of that. I mean, just look at all the stuff that we've talked about, from like, here are the traditional tools that really work, but here are those nuanced views, ranging all the way up to the better foundation models, and the choice of foundation models does matter, to what Mayank said, being able to use something like Google AI Studio, which works and when it works to show clients and so on, to what a true engineer would probably use, which would be more like a Zed connected to some kind of compute platform that has the latest foundation models, all the way up to even the foundation models are constantly evolving to the Chinese, the Kimi, as well as Gemini.
We're mentioning the models, and I think that we should start mentioning also the MCP servers that we are using, because it's becoming a trend that now you ask the model to do things with your computer, like open this website and try these things that we have been developing and tell me if it is actually working, or start these Docker containers and do all these kind of things. And to me, the most important thing about that, about the implementations of integration with MCP servers, is I want to be the human in the loop, because every single time that I'm working with a tool like this, and it does things, 2 or 3 things in a row, where I'm not in the middle. First, I don't know what it did, and second, if it makes a mistake, it's super hard to go back. So I need to be in the loop, and I need to have a project where everything is in a Git repository. So every single time that there is a change, I need to see which one it is, accept it, and
100% what Carlos said. I'll add one more point, which Carolina started off earlier on, which is how do you protect your environment? So as we all start using MCP, we've got to make sure that we are keeping that MCP run, that server, in a protected environment on our desktops and so on. We do not want it accessing our personal stuff in our own machine, unless you're using a separate developer machine, which is fine. But not a lot of people have the ability to do that. But at the same time, also when it goes out to the web, and it's creating credentials is one thing. Don't let it use your credentials. So that's 100%, Carlos. Thank you for bringing up MCP. That's another tooling framework that I think we all need to learn to master very, very quickly. This is the year of agentic AI and MCPs after all. This has been an awesome conversation today.
Pretty insightful, and I appreciate all of your wisdom and experience.
Yeah, definitely. Very practical. So shall we spend some minutes? Well, we need a volunteer for the next chapter. So if anyone wants to volunteer, it is the moment.
And I took a quick look ahead at the next chapter. Next chapter is a lot of work, so it may need to split between 2 weeks.
I would do it, but I got a problem with my power adapter. I broke it, and so I don't think I can do it the next week. Because my computer's, I have to order this from Dell and get it fixed real quick. But it depends how quickly they send it.
I would do it, but as I said, I think it would split into 2 weeks, and unfortunately, I have to be on a plane this time going to work in 2 weeks.
Maybe half of it, first part of the chapter or something like that, and someone can take it. Or anyone else, maybe?
Anyone else?
If you need it, and I would definitely do it. I mean, I'm game. I have another laptop. I can probably do it on this other laptop. Although sometimes my kids use that laptop, but I can definitely grab it and figure out how to do things. So, all right, I can do it.
Okay. Assigned. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you,
Patrick.
Patrick.
Apart from that, we have the question of the beginner book. There was I don't know if you guys were taking a look at the Discord, but we made a poll to choose the next resource for the first resource for the beginner lessons, and there was a tie. There were two resources that got into the first place. They got the same number of votes, which were data science from scratch and hands-on machine learning. So after the poll, there was some people saying, let's go for hands-on machine learning. Actually, there was someone saying, I couldn't vote in the poll, so if I can untie, let's go for hands-on machine learning. So is anyone in that decision, like data science from scratch or hands-on machine learning, is there anyone who prefers data science from scratch? Because otherwise I would like just assign the other one, like make it the winner, so that we can move on.
I,
But I haven't read any of those, so I don't have a strong opinion.
which one won? Was it that Microsoft one or a different one?
No, there are two options. Data Science from Scratch, which is a book from a guy called Joel Grus. And then another book, which is Hands-on Machine Learning with Scikit-learn, Keras, and TensorFlow, which is another book. So there are two books who had the same number of votes. So I would be my decision, because someone suggested making another poll to try to untie, but I'm scared that we can run into another tie if the number of votes is even. So I would just decide one. I don't have a strong preference, but I would prefer to make a poll to choose when to make the sessions, the beginner session. So
I will, if I may jump in, and I'm going to make a case for one of those books, if you'll all allow me. And I'm looking at the list of attendee participants right now, and I can see several of you that I know also share a common bias as I do. And this is for the Aurélien Geron hands-on machine learning with PyTorch, or the hands-on machine learning book. Because Mayank, and I believe Chris, you're in that group that we did that hands-on, and Stephen, I see you're still on. We did that hands-on machine learning Aurélien Geron book as a study group like this. It took us about almost 8 months, if I recall correctly. This was right before COVID started. And it was an incredible experience. And for a lot of the folks who went through it, that first half of the book, Aurélien goes into what is machine learning, but it's not machine learning where, oh, you just, call your model and model.fit and boom, you're done. It is, let's get into what the mathematics of it are. And really understand the model, similar to how we did LLMs from scratch. And then the second part of it, he does deep learning using when we did it was TensorFlow. Aurélien's he did a updated second edition, and then now the third edition that he's working on, that second half, he's going to be focusing not on TensorFlow, but on PyTorch and writing it around LLMs and how you use and productionalize LLMs. Aurélien's approach is very interesting. His pedagogical style is have your cake and then learn how to bake it. So he'll start off like saying, here's everything. Let's do an end-to-end full pipeline of starting with nothing. And at the end, let's have a fully baked solution. Here's how you've built an LLM. Here's how you've added something. Here's how you productionalized it. And then let's go into figuring out how you did all of those individual steps. I like that approach. I like that style. And I love Aurélien, the depth at which Aurélien goes into a lot of these things. When you compare it with like this LLM Engineer's Handbook, this is like a quick handbook that you'd have in the back of your pocket. Aurélien's book is his approach is let's get right into the lowest level, but communicate it and teach it in a way that everybody understands. And few people can do that really well. Andrej Karpathy is one of them. I'd put Aurélien like Andrej.
Andrew.
Yeah, and Andrew, who
the OG.
The OG, because a lot of people don't know or don't talk about it. He was the co-founder of Coursera, along with the biologist. I forget her name. Yes, Andrew.
Actually, his whole neural networks Coursera course is excellent for beginners. If they want to, watch instead of read.
100%. I'd put Aurélien's book and repo there. And Aurélien's repos are pretty much published as it's his entire book anyway. So everything, you can buy the book, let's say you don't want to buy the book, you'll get pretty much everything if you just clone his repo.
Well, it's good for poor, for kids that don't have as much money. So that's an option.
Exactly.
So would anyone be against the decision of just going for hands-on machine learning? Because my take on this is apparently people prefer it, and after Mash's argument, I think. Well,
Right.
I want to know just if someone.
I second Mash's view on that.
Because to me that's nice because we can just go for it, and then rather than doing a poll that is like again the same question of that we already made, we can make a question about when to do the sessions, which I think is more practical because that is something where I'm interested. I don't know if I suggested the last Sunday that I think it's interesting not to have the sessions the same day as we have now. Because I don't know you, but to me, Sunday mornings before the session, I normally finish the chapter if I haven't done it yet. So if I have 2 chapters of 2 different books, that's going to be like harder to manage. So I prefer a different day, but I think that's a decision for a good poll. And yeah, I would like to know how good, if anyone has any idea about how to do the poll. I don't know if suggest the days of the week and then another one for the time time or something like that.
I would specify the time. Otherwise, there's too many variables. Just this is the time. 2 p.m. UTC, which is 10 a.m. EST, or later.
One idea, and I'm not even sure it's a good idea, is to just have a quick discussion and ask people to propose times to include in the poll, and then let that go for like a day, and then create a poll. Just an idea.
Yeah, that's good. If anybody would like to manage that, good luck.
Well, Discord channel.
I think another layer in this, or another variable, is to consider the day. It is going to be, for example, a Saturday or a weekday. If there is a weekday, I might be not able to join at 10 a.m. because I have meetings, I have to go to schools, and maybe other folks are going to work in the Eastern time.
Yes.
That's something just to consider.
Yeah. Agree with Carolina. So it would have to be weekends if it's at a time.
So finally, are we going for hands-on machine learning book?
It seems to be Rosas, yeah.
Okay.
Do you prefer? Do you want to say anything about the data science from scratch or?
No. I was suggesting to use the hands-on machine learning from Aurélien, and on the second half about deep learning, we will be using PyTorch.
Okay, sounds good to me.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
TensorFlow is no common use right nowadays. It's more PyTorch, so that might be a good idea to switch, or until I was looking at the newest version of the book. Is going to be releasing on October 2025, which is in 3 months, 2 months, almost. So we might cover the fundamentals, but this is I agree with Marsh. Yeah, going to the mechanics than the recipes to get the bake is more important and more valuable if you want to do pretty good experiments on machine learning career.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna post a message today, basically giving some days for the people to suggest when do they prefer the sessions to be, so that I can include them in a poll, and then I will make the poll. Anyway, we use, when we are starting, at least for this book, we did it this way. We started giving people 2 weeks because we assume that we are probably gonna need at least 1 week to get the book and then another one to read the first chapter. So probably we won't start next week, but the other one. Yeah, Tom?
Oh, yeah, just on that book, I think it's a great book. I've used it in a couple courses, and I have looked at the newest version, and I do think the newest version has some very useful materials, not beyond just PyTorch, but in some of the other chapters. So I think we should find a way, one way or another, to try to cover some of the newer materials. I just wanted to mention that, and I'm happy to, as we get into it, point out what materials I think are especially useful to cover.
Yeah, good to know. I guess probably the repositories are updated already, right?
I am not sure on that. I've been looking mostly on O'Reilly. I know most of the new book is available online on O'Reilly.com.
Okay. Good to know.
Yes, it's available online, and the chapters are available are from 1 to 11. So yeah, I think it might be.
And it mostly follows the same format, but you know, he just covers some other material.
So are those chapters 1 through 11 on O'Reilly or on GitHub?
O'Reilly, yeah.
O'Reilly. Okay.
And I will check and see if the updated repos are on GitHub. They may or may not be. I think that's an open question.
This sounds like a very good topic to get started when the day that we start the book, because we have to basically decide if we're going to be following as it is in the physical copy, or we are going to skip some chapters for their newer versions or something like that.
Well, and what I would say is, you know, maybe is this something we can do? Is that we suggest people try to use the new version, and as a fallback, use the old version?
I'd recommend sticking to the new version to the best that it's available. Let's stay with the latest and greatest, because there will be significant differences. I guess the only way to do it, by the way, seems we should using the O'Reilly subscription.
Yeah, hopefully if we start doing it, I mean, if it took you 8 months, if we get started now, when we get to the second part of the book, it will be already September, October, when it's supposedly to be the publication date, the release date. So
yeah, agreed.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So in the meantime, while we started to studying the fundamentals, we have a couple of weeks in order to get the newest version of the more advanced chapters. Is what I'm looking at the table of the contents.
I had a somewhat related question. I have access to O'Reilly through a degree program I'm in. Do people have suggestions about free or inexpensive ways to access O'Reilly for other people?
I second that question. I'd be interested to know as well.
And I know in the United States, there are some public libraries that offer free access. Like the San Francisco Library does, I believe the New York Public Library does. But if anyone, I'm actually going to put a question into the general, but if anyone knows anything, and I'll share some ideas.
It does not include something like Pact, right? That if you have the proof of purchase, you can have the digital version. With O'Reilly, it's not like that, isn't it?
No, I do not believe it is. You know, O'Reilly has thousands of books that they publish, and also books from other publishers. And they even have videos and other things. So it really is a great resource. I mean, it by itself is more than enough to cover the content from for so many different topics. I have a few ideas. You know, public libraries are the first one to look at, and then the second one to look at are you know, college programs. There are ways, if you enroll in a course, that you sometimes get access. Those are the two ideas I know about. You know, I know the New York Public Library, even if you're not a resident, if you visit the library, you get a card, you can get a card that's good for, I think, a month or 3 months. I think you have to physically visit them. I don't think you can call on the phone. It's something we could look into. You know, I just don't know what's available internationally. Are most people international or in the US, or where are most people who participate?
I am US based.
Okay. All right. Well, I put a question in the chat, and then I'll respond there with some ideas of my own.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, especially if we are going to be trying to stick to the new version as much as is available. So I think it's a very good question.
Okay. I'll tell you right now, I'm a little reluctant. There's a way to enroll in courses at Arizona State University for $25 that I believe gives you access. So there's a quick little trick right there.
So $25 to be a student at Arizona State University gets free access to maybe, I don't know how much O'Reilly costs, like 100 or 200 bucks. Wow. But then you have a educational, you're now a student at Arizona State University.
Yeah, and I'm reluctant to, and I guess I just did. I've been reluctant to too publicly publish that because I don't want it to ruin things for people.
Yeah.
But it's a cool little trick. ASU has a really inclusive program where you can enroll in a course for $25, and then after you complete the course, if you want credit, you pay an extra $400. But you can actually enroll for $25 and get complete access to the courses and to office hours with the professor and to almost daily tutoring. So I'll put that in the resources. Yeah.
That is, man, there's a product for everything.
Yeah, and I have no affiliation with ASU. I did take one of the courses, so I know it's for real, and I thought the course was a great course. It was a computer science course, but I'm not making any money off this. And I just want to say, you know, this is my first time on a call, and Sundays don't work well for me, but I was able to hop on today. And I just want to tell all of you, and especially the leaders who started it, what a great resource I think it is. And I really think it's fantastic what you all are doing.
Totally agree. Thank you.
Yeah, between when we end this call, there's uh like a live AMA going on with Ray Fernando, who was a kind of 12-year software engineer at Apple, and he is currently diving into details about agents and like how to do planning, tasks, and different like ways to use cursor specifically. And they are discussing Grok 4 and Kimi K2 too. So like hop in there if you have interest in trying to use those professional tools.
That's a good one. One more share I'll share for those who are in the South Florida area, anywhere from like maybe as far as Tampa to West Palm Beach and below in Miami, the founder of Lightning AI, he was the guy who hired Sebastian Rasca and gave him the job for a while at Lightning. He will be speaking and teaching folks for about 2 hours or more this coming Tuesday evening. in downtown Miami at the lab, I believe, in Wynwood.
What time is that, Mash?
That's going to be at 6 p.m. start in Wynwood.
Are you going to be there?
I am going to try my best to be there.
I may.
Okay.
Traffic is kind of
traffic. Yeah. But if you don't park in the labs parking, because I think it's a little bit more expensive. Just do the Wynwood Street parking, and it's a lot cheaper. That's safe enough. Means Wynwood, and after that, grab, go visit a art installation, museum, get some food. I mean, Wynwood is probably one of the more happening, more interesting places in all of Miami.
Yeah, I went to the one with the co-founder of Hugging Face a couple weeks.
Yeah.
And my parking was $20. It was kind of sucked, actually.
Yeah. Did you park in the parking lot?
I parked across the street in the parking complex, the recommended parking complex.
Yeah. Just street parking is just fine.
Sure, if you could find it.
Find it, I know. But for those who are in the South Florida area, do consider it. William Falcon is certainly an interesting speaker. Yeah, and he's going to be doing how to build AI agents, a practical workshop, hands-on. So bring your laptop and learn directly from him.
Yeah, for the uninitiated, there's this series of Sebastian Raska, like I'm trying to share this, that he has this whole setup for trying to code attention mechanisms from scratch, implement a GPT model, then pre-training, how to pre-train, how to fine-tune an LLM for classification, then LLM fine-tuning a LLM to follow instructions. So he has this whole series that it's quite good. That if you want to get in the weeds and start from scratch on how to actually write the PyTorch code that do all this stuff, then you can follow this 7 or 8 videos that he has, and it's like a gem, a total gem. And you will, when you next try to read the research papers, you will get a fair good amount of idea of the tricks and tips that go into developing these kind of architectures, and this whole code base that that everyone kind of takes for granted right now in the AI research field. Yeah, thanks for sharing the Lightning AI talk, Mash.
Of course. If it's saved, and if it does go on YouTube, I'll make sure to share that link as well. Just, it should not be limited to only folks who are local to Florida.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah.